Making huge environments in Blender can be a bit of a challenge, and I wanted to make just that. A giant castle sitting on top of a village. It was a bit of a journey and it took me quite a bit, but now I can finally share my process and everything I did along the way with you on this video. I'll also share some free assets that you can get on the Patreon, and I would really appreciate your support on the Patreon if you can. Before we start with anything complex, any complex shader, any complex texture, any fancy model, I want to emphasize the importance of environments with a great first read. Environments that have a fantastic silhouette, great blockouts, with proper overlapping shapes. If you look at any environments made by artists who are just masters at what they do, all of their environments have a really great first read because their base is strong, their shapes are fundamentally strong. So that's what I try to focus on myself. I build out this basic landscape with a lake for negative space on the side and start building out these overlapping hills I want. Notice I'm keeping the shapes simple. Same for this main hero hill where our main castle is gonna sit on. I keep it low poly. And then same for everything else around it. Then I make a simple castle wall and make a circular fortification, and now I fill it up with interesting shapes that resonate with the vibe I want the castle to have. Now the composition is quite tilted on one side, so to counterbalance I'm gonna put the dense village that I want on the other side. Notice I'm still just putting basic cube-like shapes for the houses. Also put in this bigger building that can draw the eye as a center point in the village, throw in a HDRI and a cold sun, or I guess a moon in this context. And then I can focus on setting a basic foreground. I just want it to flow enough that the viewer can look in a bit of a curve that follows through here and then goes into the village and then up to the castle. Next I make a basic camera move just to see how the scene would be revealed and what parts of the image I really want to focus on, because there's no point making anything that the camera doesn't see. And then I model the houses. It took me a bit to model the homes out, but I'm uploading a video tomorrow about the creation process. I go pretty in depth about it, and you can access the blend files and the models themselves on the Patreon. I would greatly appreciate it if you guys check it out, and it's a great way to support the channel as well. So then I bring these buildings into the main scene. And I start swapping out the blockout meshes with the real assets because the blockout has done its job. The replacements work fine. No need to change the composition, you just upgrade the shapes. Right below the castle, I want to group some of these houses together as I want to build a port here in the future. Now the foreground houses need some fixing. With proportional editing on, I select new areas nearby the house and then press S to scale on the Z axis. Press Z to only scale on the Z axis and press 0 to flatten it out into a plane, as you don't build homes on uneven ground. Then I decide to go in on a shape for the main castle. For that, references keep your design more grounded and realistic. Create a nice castle silhouette, I carefully craft a mood board to draw my inspiration from. The other side of the castle is a bit more sharp, contrasting the blockier side of the castle. It helps me show the different uses, maybe the different functionality of the different parts of the castle. To reinforce the scale, separation and mood, I introduce subtle atmosphere, just a volume scatter with a very low density. That's where moss would gather naturally, low points near hills, between clustered buildings. Now I start building out some more detailed things like the fencing. A simple fencing arrayed across a curve that you can draw by going into edit mode, and then you can choose the number you want to array. You can scale it down a bit, choose how close together they are, and then you can start repeating that with the nearby homes. Keeping these small things in mind helps ground your environment better. Then I used the trees I made for another tutorial that you can get on the Patreon. I scattered them to populate most of the barren hills, but because the trees I made were supposed to be optimized for background use, I still need some foreground ones. I use Botanic for that. For agriculture, I get some wheat assets from Bridge. I gave them a different texture, and then using a soil mask which I use to paint on the actual environment. Scattering the wheat with the same mask I paint the soil is pretty efficient. The master material consists of grass, mud, and soil, each serving a different purpose, making a clear separation where people walk, where people grow crops, and where it's just barren land. And after finishing that, the scale looks nice, the small things and the large things coexisting, providing nice scale. The trees, fences, houses give the viewer a point of comparison in terms of scale. When it comes to the far background, I don't suggest throwing geometry at every problem, it'll just make your issues worse. I suggest just using a displacement for background grass, just scale the value up by a lot. If you want some extra clumping, use a noise texture with a bit of a color ramp to give higher concentrated areas and lower concentrated areas. It's enough to read as texture without costing us too much performance or cluttering in the composition. Then I bring in a bunch of stones. A few of them are going to be placed on the castle to read as hill, some merging with the castle walls. And then some smaller ones nearby some homes, stone fencing. That works. But now I want to focus back on the castle. Make it look actually decent. I use booleans for windows to create some voids, spacing them to imply structure, not just random decorations. We just gotta sell the construction enough. Same goes for the entrance. I create a giant staircase that comes from the main entry gate to the bottom and just create some more interesting shapes, bring some more grandeur to the castle. Now for texturing, the master material is the exact same that I built for the home. It helps keep the world coherent, a layer of different kinds of rocks mixed together with more plaster, and then on top of that more moss. All of these help bring in nice variety, especially the 2 different kinds of rocks that are used. And then the other stuff helps you regurgitate that there's wear and tear onto the castle, drip lines, just stuff that happens nearby humid areas, especially nearby a lake. And because the scene is set at night, lighting takes over as the main design tool. I place practical warm lights where people would logically need it. Doors, windows, castle's entrance, just the main village, the dock, a lot of them in the castle. They bring in nice contrast, especially from the cool moon-tinted light. Now I quickly hop onto Sketchfab. I cut into this wall using a boolean and replace it with an actual door for the entrance. I find this fun photo scan of some fort, so I use it to place nearby the castle. I also give it some extra light. Now, the water. For now I want to keep it simple and believable, so I start with just 2 noise patterns with 2 different scales, one very high and one very low scale. And then a third one with a color ramp to break those 2 up, as I use that as the mix factor between those 2. You can always play around with the values to change the harshness with the color ramp. Now, lights should always have a reason to be and look real. So for that I get an alpha of a real fire sequence. You can get a lot of them if you just search fire sequence on YouTube. The lanterns provide a nice glow effect and also gives a reason for the lights we placed earlier to exist. Now, for the dock. Firstly, I see that there's a lot of barren land beside it, so I'm gonna fill up most of it with farmland, because it makes sense that the villagers would use a lot of this fertile land nearby as farmland. And for the dock itself, I create a single plank instanced on an array. To build the actual plank, you can just use a single image, give it a displacement by subdividing a little bit. From the image texture, you can derive the bump and roughness information. You can just put a color ramp to make it black and white and play with the values to get a decent enough result. And we can just use that as it's far away, so we don't need hero asset level detailing. So using the Bagapie add-on for the arraying, which is free, I just scatter them to make a proper walkable area in the dock. And now the dock feels much better, but it's still not enough. Now I want to populate the dock further, so I get some stalls. Some different kinds with different variety. Then I just clump them up together and put them where it makes sense to make a little market. Further, add some light poles with the same light that we used before. Another fun tip, when you're building your scenes out and you have these lights that cast super harsh shadows on these low roughness planes, like water in my case, and ruin the look, you can go into the properties of that light by going here and just check off glossy. That makes a huge difference. The last thing the dock needs is ship to give it some more life, so I first work on our main ship. The main ship is going to be moving, so to give that some life I'm gonna displace the sails. To displace the sails we use a displacement modifier, use clouds or any type of noise you want, and then paint out specific vertex groups that you want to be moving, which in our case is the sails. And then use that vertex group for the target of your displacement and set the coordinates to global for the displacement modifier. Now whenever you move the ship, the sails will just follow. Even this subtle flutter reads enough from a distance and helps the scene feeling frozen and still. I try to find some more fun camera angles to look from. Just going around the scene, it feels quite rewarding after you've done so much and put so much effort and work into the scene just to fly around it. Now people help when it comes to bringing the environment to life further. So I look up some references and then just craft the clothing of this lady that is one of the main characters. She's walking by carrying some water. You can get access to these characters I made on the Patreon for free. You can just click the link in the description, go there and download them. Make sure to download the simulation data as well. If you want to see a tutorial on how you make characters like this, I have another tutorial on the Patreon breaking down how I made these custom characters in detail. I also simulate some fire for the main guard that is walking by. Making them move is also pretty simple. We can just make them follow the path. You can make a curve and then just use the follow path constraint to make them walk along it. I also place a lot of them nearby the castle. Make them static, no need to move, give them a basic pose, give them a pole, and just make them stand there. They might not even be visible, but it just helps just in case. The ship needed a better read, some more attention, so I added some deck lighting and subtle cool backlighting to give it an outline. Now, looking around, the scene also felt a little too clean, especially the main castle. The structure a little too solid, so I gave them a little gentle edge wear with the OCD add-on. Just a bit more wear and tear onto the thing. Helps reduce the CG look, keeping it from feeling too clean. You can see over here that the edge light captures a lot of nice detail. I also had this just kind of passed out drunk guy underneath his cart. I gave him a light and also the VDB we made before as the fire. It's just a fun little detail, make him breathe, and he's just kind of visible in the foreground. As to the story, I also bring in some bushes and just have them separated between big, mid, and smaller tier bushes because the environment in real life doesn't just have things randomly everywhere. You'll notice some clumps of big bushes and then clumps of smaller bushes around it. You'll notice a gradual fall off in terms of density and detail. I'd say touching grass really helps as a 3D artist. After the bushes, I build out a small library of just random foliage. I've just been building it out over time of just good foliage I like. I do a test run of how it scatters, then I blend them together in different layers. It's separated in small grass, big grass, weeds, flowers. And then I copy and bring it over to our main environment. And I really like the way the grass just brings a little more softness, but also more nice detail and color variety into the scene. And finally, I want to give the water some motion using a driver. And you may ask, what is a driver? Well, a driver is just a simple mathematical expression that allows you to change an input based on a relation to some other variable in your scene. So what I do is I change the location and the W value of that noise based on the changes in frames. So the expression I use is hash frames slash and the amount I want to move it by. In my case, about 5 to 6,000. I hope that makes sense. I might be messing up the explanation a little bit, but it works. And now, finally, near the church, we talked about a graveyard. Period appropriate as they would bury their dead near the church. First, I just cleared out a path with the mask for our ground material that we have. Then I went on to Sketchfab and put a lot of tombstones with different variety over there. And we have a decent graveyard. Now, one final unifying touch would be hanging banners. Just few banners with some crest, maybe some flags that I animate and bake and bring it back to the main scene, give some wood that's holding up these planks for the water. Functional details like that carries meaning. And with that all being done and said, I think I'm pretty happy with the result. You can always spend more time, but I want to leave it off here and hit the final render. And after about 24 hours of rendering, this is the final result. Thanks a lot for watching. If you made it till the end, maybe leave a castle emoji at the end of your comments, so I know you did. I really hope you found my process helpful, and I will see you guys in the next video. And if you would really like to support, maybe check out the Patreon. Thank you.